organized by International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, and CGIAR Science Program on Policy Innovations. And here I'd like to mention we are also very thankful to IFPRI for the generous support which they have made to the conference. They are sponsoring a lunch here, so thank you very much. The chairperson of the session is a scholar, a bureaucrat with over 40 years of experience, Dr. Dalwai. He has been an IAS officer and has held key positions in multiple government departments, including industries, agriculture, and water resources. He's considered to be an authority on agricultural issues in the country, where he has extensive experience. And at the moment, he's the chair of the Karnataka Agricultural Prize Commission, and also one of the premier institutes of the country, the ISEC, Institute of Social and Economic Change. It's a pleasure to invite you on the dais, sir. Please grace the dais. I now invite Dr. Anjani Kumar. He's Senior Research Fellow, International Food Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, to please come on the dais. The panelists in this session are Dr. Seema Bathla, Professor Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Professor Elumalai Kannan, Professor Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Mamta Pradhan, Senior Research Coordinator of IFPRI, New Delhi. And Dr. Devesh Roy, Senior Research Fellow, IFPRI, New Delhi. And Dr. Kriti Sharma, she's a research analyst, IFPRI, New Delhi. I request all of you to please grace the dais. I now request Dr. Dalwai to please conduct this session.
Good evening. Can you all hear me there? Yeah, hall is almost empty. Hopefully it will get filled as we start speaking. Yeah, thank you so much. And first, let me thank on behalf of all of us sitting here for giving us this opportunity to share with you some thoughts on a very important and contemporary theme that deals with livelihood, and of course livelihood in the mountain and hill economies. So I am splitting these two so that it gets into the heads of everybody sitting here, that we're talking about livelihood associated with a very vulnerable region of the world, not just India. And as our panelists present their cases on different aspects of this theme, I'm sure you would be able to appreciate it much better than what we might be now perceiving. So we have 6 panelists here. Each of them, he is an expert in his or her respective domain. I would like to just leave a preamble over the next 2 minutes, that when we talk about livelihood, we must understand that it is a set of activities that fill our every day, all through our life. It could be as simple as meeting the physiological requirements, food, water, and then going up, other requirements of the human life. Now, how do we ensure that we have a livelihood, and that too a dignified and respectable livelihood? That's the question. Because when we talk about livelihood, it can be either based on our own earning, or it can be a total dependence on others, including governments. But as is the nature of human being, he prefers to earn it himself. And therefore, when we talk of livelihood, it refers to the way we earn our money, such that we can meet all our physiological and higher order needs. The best way of defining higher order needs is to go by Maslow's definition. So if we go by all the needs as defined by Maslow, how does a human being make an earning to meet all these requirements? If that's the theme and that's the hypothesis, then how do we contextualize it in the hill and the Himalayan economy? Unfortunately, as we see over the last 70 years, of course there are exceptions. By and large, we do not differentiate between the hills and the plains. All of research and development, whether within the life sciences, social sciences, or the government schemes, the policy support, the price support, are all first driven towards plain areas, and some minor modifications are done to meet the requirements of the hilly terrains or more difficult areas. So this particular theme, as this conference discusses, must be able to highlight the inadequacies that are in practice so far and why we need to have a special focus for Himalayan region in our country. And as you know, Himalayan region is considered as a third pole after the North and South Pole, because this is where the mass of ice, glaciers are here, next only to Arctic and Antarctic. But what are we doing with that? That's the vulnerability that we need to discuss. And in India, it spreads over 2,500 kilometers. It encompasses 13 union territories and states, from Jammu Kashmir on the west to Arunachal Pradesh on the east. And this region is home to 34% of India's utilizable water. And yet, it is the most drought-prone area. That's the irony. So the challenge before any of us, including development economists, is how do you reconcile economics and ecology? I think that's the fundamental question. So when we talk about livelihoods in Himalayan region, what we would be really listening to you is, how are we going to reconcile economic growth with ecological sustainability? And that's the challenge. So friends, I will stop here, and then we will start listening to our bright panelists here. The first one, of course, who is going to give a welcome and background of the panel discussion would be Dr. Anjani Kumar. What I would suggest is that we have roughly 2 hours for us, though we started late. So each of you can take 12 minutes, so that we spend about an hour, 15 minutes on your presentations, followed by Q&A, and then we'll sum it up. So I would request Anjani Kumar to welcome. And also go ahead, or you can go ahead straight away to the panel. And for the information of all the members sitting here, Dr. Anjani Kumar is one of our senior most research agriculture economists in the country today. He is presently working with International Food Policy and Research Institute. He has also worked with other international organizations like ICRISAT. He studied in one of the best institutes, National Dairy Research Institute. He has won several awards, and just to quote a few, one is Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Award 2017, Lal Bahadur Shastri Young Scientist Award. This is a very prestigious award as a young scientist, 2005, and NAS Young Scientist Award 2003, and Norman Borlaug Fellow 2008. So Dr. Anjani Kumar, I leave it to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all the distinguished participants, panelists. On behalf of International Food Policy Research Institute, particularly South Asia office, and on my own personal behalf, I join the organizers and Dr. Dalwai to welcome you to this panel discussion. Dr. Dalwai has already introduced the topic, what are the challenges, what are the barriers, how vulnerable are the regions, and how we can ensure the livelihood, and what could be some of the strategies. The purpose of organizing this panel discussion is to generate some ideas on this aspect and also to give some kind of directions which can, as he was mentioning that we have not been able to distinguish the development strategies for plains and hills. So what could be our strategy, how can we delineate and distinguish the development priorities of the normal plain regions and then hill and mountain economies. So these aspects we will discuss, and there are variety of topics, the different sub-themes we have identified, from macro to kind of micro opportunity, how we can link. So we will start with doubling farmers' income. Dr. Dalwai was the chairman of the committee. So we have tried to assess with Dr. Seema Bathla and other colleagues that what have been our accomplishments and how the integration or diversification of the systems can accelerate the farmers' income. and also then how we can prioritize the resources or investment for acceleration and inclusive development of the regions. Then some of the aspects that climate change related issues, gender, and also that how this hill and mountain economies can harness the potential of trade to boost the rural livelihoods in this region. And then what has been the dynamics of particularly the female participation. There is a lot of debate about till 2017 there was a decline in the women's labor force participation rate, but after that there is some increase in the labor force participation rate. So on that we have utilized the latest time use survey which was conducted in 2024 and very less explored. So one of the dimensions we will highlight in this, and with this brief background I think it will be useful for the policymakers. This session, outcome of this session will be useful for the policymakers, for the students, for the academia. So, and also I take this opportunity to thank the chair for acceding to our request at a very short notice to chair this panel discussion. And also we are thankful to the Indian Association of Social Science Institutions, Institute for Human Development, particularly Dr. Alaknarayan Sharma, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Professor Ramesh Chand, for collaborating with us, for partnering with us, and I think we will continue our collaboration in future activities also. With this, I will straight away go to our presentation. So this is a kind of general. So why we are, there was a concern about the Indian agriculture. There are many concerns, but I have highlighted few of the things in which background the doubling. Okay, so there was a deceleration in the returns from farming. There was a concern that commensurate to the input use, we are not able to realize the returns from investment or from expenditure. And there have been a lot of support in terms of input as well as output prices support. We all know that minimum support prices, procurement mechanism, subsidies, but they have helped only up to certain extent and up to certain geographies. We all know that particularly the procurement is initially confined to the western, northwestern region of India, Punjab, Haryana, western UP, and then in terms of rice, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, and they have catch up. So it has, and also terms of trade to agriculture have not been very favorable except in a few years since 2005-06. And shrinking land size and fragmentation of land holdings. That is again the perpetual problem of Indian agriculture. And apart from that, there is a large interstate and intra-state disparities in income as well as the estate formation. With this background, in 2016, Government of India constituted a committee on doubling of farmers' income by 2023. And keeping 2015-16 as the base year, and that is income of the farmers from all sources at real price. And Dr. Dalwai, who is chairing the session, he was the chair, and there were several recommendations of that. And they have also estimated that what will be kind of, if we don't intervene, business as usual scenario, and then what will be the scenario if we accelerate the growth, and other major suggestions also given that what could be our technological innovations and what could be the sources of growth for the Indian agriculture. Niti Aayog, Professor Ramesh Chand published a paper also that a strategy, so how much fertilizer will be needed, how much irrigation we need to extend. So this is agriculture. So, but here I would like to clarify here, when we talk about farmers' income, it's not only farm income, but farm as well as non-farm income of the farmers include activities. And all of you may be knowing that even the farming households now they derive close to 50% of their income from non-farm sources. It's not only they get income from the farming sources. So when we talk about farmers' income, we need to consider other sources of income also except from that. And there has been a lot of government initiatives. I have listed few, so lot of, but there are these 3 farm laws which have been abandoned because of the protests. But these are the reforms, hike in MSP, now millet mission, oilseed mission. Today, the Honorable Prime Minister launched many schemes, and that includes also the mission for pulses and the mission for millets, and also oilseed mission, and also some states like Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, they have implemented price deficiency gap. So these are the, but when the government announced their intention to double the income of the farmers, there was kind of suspicion or apprehension in the minds of people, and that was from both, from theoretical perspective as well as from practical aspects. And many people have quoted the theory, Lewis 1954-55, that land productivity will be higher in industry as compared to agriculture, so it may not be possible to double the income within a short span of time. But then also some of the, for example, Ashok Gulati and Professor Ramesh Chand in 2021-22, they have highlighted that we have followed, India has followed the industry-led growth model, and agriculture got a backseat kind of situation. So we need to give more focus for the promotion of agriculture growth and climatic factor, or they have highlighted these are the constraints for realization of the doubling of farmers' income, and also regional differences in irrigation, soil and climatic conditions. These are the concerns. But the setting of target helped in generating awareness about the sensitivities in the center, and also it helped to change the paradigm of the agricultural development. It's not only that production-led or increase in production, but increase in income of the farmers. That has become a kind of mantra or the kind of motivation for the agricultural development strategies. So, but we don't have that kind of regular data on the farmers' income. We don't have that. So we have tried to take advantage of the NSSO situation assessment survey of the farmers, and we have utilized all 59th rounds, 70th round and 77th round, and the sources of farmers' income group into 4-5 categories. So we have tried to estimate, and then also we tried. So there are few things have emerged. That one is that there has been increase in the farmers' income. There is a wrong perception that there has not been increase in the real income of the farmers. There has been increase, but there is a lot of variation, heterogeneity in the farmers' income across a state, across regions. And if you look at the hill and mountain economy, again within that region there is a variation, but Uttarakhand and Bihar, these two states, they have in fact registered their income. They could be able to double their income within that period, and maybe because of low base, and also maybe because of higher growth in the agriculture. And many states could not. These are the growth. I think time is less. Another aspect is that there has been a lot of diversification in the sources of income. In the latest year, non-farm businesses, the livestock income, they have become major driver of the income growth of the farmers. And also there is a variation across social caste, across land size, across regions. And then I will take some 3-4 minutes just. So there are 3 states. If you look at Bihar, Uttarakhand and Union Territories combined, they have been able to double their income, and closer to doubling farmer income or less than means they have realized 80% of the intended target. That includes Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Jammu and Kashmir, Maharashtra, Rajasthan and northeastern states. And there are states which are 25 to 40% means they could achieve 60% of the target. And then there are states which are which have not achieved even 60%. So another aspect that if farmers are involved only in crop cultivation, their income is very less, 6,000 something in 2022-23. But if the same farmers, they are having crop plus livestock, their income doubles. And if they go for crops, livestock, as well as wages, then their income more than double. And if they are also involved in crop, livestock, wages, plus non-farm business, so it has gone almost 3.5 times. So message is that you can make the farming very efficient, but it may not be sufficient to run the households. If we want a viable income for the farming households, we need integration within the farm sector and all integration outside the farm system. Means we have to have rural industry, we have to have non-farm employment opportunities so that there can be multiple employment opportunities and multiple sources of income. And this is true for small and marginal farmers also. It is true for all categories of households. And so, yeah. So we have seen that farmers' net income increased, but around 75% at aggregate level, at India level, means could not be 100%, but I think it's a good accomplishment. And also there has been significant changes in the composition of farmers' income, and message is that we cannot solely rely on crop production. We have to go beyond crop production. We have to increase our focus on providing investment and institutional support to high-value agricultural crops, livestock, fishery, poultry, and also non-farm sector has performed better in comparison to the farm sector in many of the states. And also large interstate disparity are still, in spite of higher growth in some of the eastern states. Punjab and Haryana farmers earn almost 5 times more than their counterparts earn in Bihar and West Bengal farmers. Bihar, Chhattisgarh, MP, they are gearing up, means acceleration is there. And similarly, marginal farmers, their income is 1/4 of the large farmers. Upper caste and OBC earn 1.5. So I think we need some sort of institutional interventions to reduce the gap, reduce the inequality. And so way forward, I think we need to continue the investment. In fact, we need to accelerate the investment in irrigation, other rural infrastructure, research and development, marketing, to improve the productivity, input use, efficiency, and economic viability. Provision of adequate credit. There has been a lot of growth in the flow of institutional credit since 2004. Every 3 years, credit has been more than doubled. So I think we need to keep that momentum. And also we need kind of some estimation of investment requirements for technological innovations, digitalization of agriculture, and more focus on PPT models, and also targeted and location-specific support measures. That one size will not fit everywhere. One approach may not be suitable for every ecologio, so we need more decentralized approach for development and rationalization of input and outputs of the. With this, I would like to thank the chair for allowing me some more minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anjani. So he has given us a very optimistic picture. At least I, sitting here, feel very happy. Because when the whole country thinks that we did nothing, but what Dr. Anjani brings out that we have achieved 75% of the target. And to get more serious, see, when we set the target, we set it in real terms. We could have easily set it in nominal terms. And that freedom was given to me to either fix it nominal terms or real terms. And I put that pressure. Dr. Seema Bathla knows, she was working with me, that we put that pressure on ourselves because we wanted country to change faster. And I think what we see today has really done us good. Achieving 75% of the change in income in real terms is not easy in agriculture. And that too, when we had certain crucial years, including drought years, we had also, global situation that was actually working against us. So thank you, Dr. Anjani. But one point that all of you must remember, as he rightly said, farmers' income in India comprises only 60% from farming, and 40% comes from non-farm sector. And larger the land size, higher is this income from farm. Lower the farm size, lower is income from the farming. So that is livelihood. I am giving you this particular figure to stress that livelihood in mountainous region means where agriculture is a greater challenge, we will have to focus more on non-farm sector. So that's what we will have to look at. So now I would invite Dr. Seema Bathla. So Dr. Seema Bathla is a professor in one of the prestigious universities, the Jawaharlal Nehru University. And she has won several awards for her outstanding works. And she has won Dr. S.R. Sen Biennial Prize by the Indian Society of Agricultural Economics. She has also won Dr. R.T. Doshi Award for Best Article in Agricultural Economics Research Review. She has had several international collaborations and then several best peer-reviewed publications. And from my personal experience, as I said, that she was one of our active members, and she's the one who actually worked out the investment. So she's rightly speaking on investment. And she gave us that model of ICOR, right? Increment.
It was investment requirements for doubling farmers' income.
Because we know we needed to grow at a particular rate, but what was the investment to be made to achieve every 1% growth rate is what very laboriously, intelligently Dr. Seema worked out. So now I leave the floor to Dr. Bathla, and she would be speaking to us on prioritization of investments for sustainable rural livelihoods in hill and mountainous regions. Thank you.
So I start from where Dr. Anjani stopped. So, doubling farm income is a very important goal for Government of India. But in this case, there are many initiatives that have to be taken and were taken. One of the most important is the role of government. So without hand-holding, nothing can be achieved because agriculture, especially the small farmers, are very, very vulnerable. So I'll be focusing only on one aspect of government intervention, that is through expenditure. Expenditure is again on investment and on input subsidies. I won't be talking about output subsidies. So the literature says that there is a positive relation between capital, that is investment, and labor productivity, negative relationship between labor productivity and rural poverty, and rapid growth in productivity is possible through technology adoption, especially by increase in spending on R&D, which drives agriculture growth, and these together will be the key to poverty alleviation. But there has been a lot of controversies about this topic. But one thing that there is a consensus that public expenditure on investment and subsidy is very important because the amount spent by private sector or the farmers tend to be lower than the socially optimal level. Now, the issue is investment more important than input subsidy for accelerating agriculture growth? If you talk to farmers, they will be very happy receiving subsidies on inputs. But if you talk to government about it, they say, oh, there is a fiscal crunch. It's not possible for us to spend so much. And budgetary allocations, as you know, towards investment have been going down over the years. Second issue, which is very important among the academician, is that government is spending so much on input subsidy that maybe crowd out investment. That is, another hot potato among the academicians. Now, the issue is, if we look at the data, we see that the input subsidy expenditure is growing like anything, and farmers appreciate that. But if you see the expenditure on account of public account, that is the investment on account of public account, that has just risen from 250 billion to 500 billion. And if you see the private investment that is on the farmers' account, that is pretty high, gone up from 250 billion in 1980. Right now, it is up to 2,000 billion, and the recent figure also show around 2,200 billion. So the contribution of out of total investment, the contribution of farmers' investment is almost 83%, government 15%, and the corporate sector, that is coffee plantation and tea plantation, is hardly, 2%. So another thing which, if agriculture growth is not picking up, we generally blame that, government is not spending much, and that is why the agriculture growth is not picking up. But it is the private sector, that is the farmer, who are making the investments. Second thing is that, very important to understand that government has been spending a lot, but the amount of expenditure that government is doing is less than the amount that is spent on input subsidies. So you can see that the fertilizer subsidy occupies a major chunk, followed by power subsidy, then credit subsidy, irrigation subsidy. Agriculture expenditure is very, very low as far as, all India picture is concerned. So is there a trade-off between investment and subsidy? So many studies had pointed out that there's a scissor effect, rise in public investment and no rise in the input subsidy. But during 80s, you can see that there's a fall in public investment, rise in input subsidies. So many agriculture economists argued that agriculture growth is not picking up because government has not been investing. It is just spending more on subsidy. But if you see after 2003-04, both have been increasing. Capital formation on account of government is going up, as well as expenditure on on subsidy is also going up. So, but if you see the overall picture of agriculture investment in total investment in the economy, we call it GACFA divided by GDCF, you can see that there has been a relative neglect of agriculture sector in India. From 16% spending on agriculture investment, it has now reached 5%, which is very, very low, which means that government is investing more in the non-agriculture sector compared to the agriculture sector. So now, if you see the amount of investment in total GDCF, it has fallen from 17 to 6. And if you see the GCFA, that is investment in agriculture divided by GDP, that has gone up from 5 to 16%, which means that agriculture is contributing 16% to the economy, but getting investment of the government only 5%, which is very, very less. And if you see the share of input subsidy in total GDP, that is 8%. So total government is spending is 11% of GDP. Again, one has to really see that what other sectors are getting subsidy about. So if you see the structure of social and economic expenditure and share, we find that there's a lot of, differences. Agriculture gets a very low share compared to other, segments. Irrigation has the highest, rural development again very high, but agriculture gets very, very low. Similarly, in case of social expenditure also, more and more spending is on education compared to, social welfare, nutrition, welfare of SC and ST. Now, the linkage that we have tried to establish from our study is that public expenditure on input subsidy as well as investment are important. We cannot do without it. Both investment and subsidy are important. I'll make a case here. So in case of low-income states, middle-income state, high-income state, we find that if we take investment in agriculture, which is irrigation, or investment for agriculture, that is investment in other kind of, activities also, we find that the productivity effects are much higher if government spend. Poverty effects are also very high if government spend. So we try to find this kind of relationship through a structural equation model containing 13 equations based on the direct and indirect elasticities. We estimated the model, and here are the final results. So from this result, one can see that there are 2 points which I would like to make here. Number one is the marginal effects of additional investment and subsidy and their impact on income in the first table. And in the second table, it is the impact on the poverty. So if you see, the states are divided as per high income, middle income, low income states, and we have done the ranking of the spending. On the left-hand side is the spending on investment and on spending on subsidy. Now you can see what are the marginal returns across the states. You can see that marginal returns are very, very high in the less income states. Perhaps the diminishing marginal returns had applied in case of high income states. Agriculture R&D had returns 3 times more in high-income states compared to low-income state where it is 9.9%. The message is that if government has additional 1 rupee to spend, where should government spend? In high-income states like Punjab, Haryana, government should spend more on health and education. In case of low-income state, government has to spend more on agriculture R&D, fertilizer subsidy, and power subsidy, and roads. So now you can see that we have one national policy which doesn't really work. So as Dr. Anjani said, one-size-fit approach may not work. State government, since agriculture and irrigation are state subject, the state government have to gear up to see that from where the returns are maximum. The returns are very high from subsidy in case of low-income state, very high in case of investment in low-income states compared to the high-income state. Even if we see well irrigation, that is private investment, the marginal returns in Punjab, Haryana, and the other richer states are very less at 1.6 times, whereas in the low-income state, it is 19.8 times, which means that states like Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, and other eastern states should get subsidy and support from the government. Similar are the effects on poverty, which means that government has to reorient its policy to see from where the returns are highest. Accordingly, one can change the public expenditure policy. Now the issue is that the literature says subsidies are bad. Fertilizer use is good, but fertilizer subsidy is bad. But one has to really think that what exactly should we do? As per these results, expenditure on subsidy and investment have returns across different states, across different components. One has to really think that how state governments prioritize this spending. Now the issue is, should we do away with subsidy or should we rationalize subsidy? That is the literature that has come up in case of African countries where they were facing a lot of problem. The realization was that in case subsidies are reduced, it directly affects agriculture growth. So there was a revival of the program in terms of giving subsidies to the farmer, but this literature argues that the subsidies have to be smart. So the market smart subsidies should be followed, which are again focusing on targeting, effectiveness, and sustainability. So each state government has to find out which subsidy is going to be targeted, how it has to be made effective, and how it has to be made sustainable. Now, in our country, reforms have been underway. We are going very, we are very upfront about, using drip and sprinkler irrigation. We have been very upfront about, bringing water use efficiency. Solar energy, as you know, has been, one of the, another policy reform that is taking place. Fertilizer, again, we went in for neem-based urea, and some results are there, but I won't say across all the states. But the main issue is that, which again, I would say very controversial. Should we go in for income support or should we continue with price support in case of input subsidy? So Government of India started a pilot project in DBT in fertilizer, but somehow that program was not really successful because of many administrative issues. But now this I leave to the audience to think about whether we should go in for income support in case of input subsidy or should we continue with the price support, which is very inefficient. So as just one exercise, we try to find out if at all farmer is to be given income support instead of subsidy on fertilizer, power, what should be the amount that we should give to the farmer? What would farmer be happy with? So based on the NSS data, we worked out the amount of cash transfer that should be given to the farmer so that his output is maintained and the country doesn't have to compromise on food security. So we estimated the cash transfer across all the states taking aggregate output into account, at all India level, we found that if total cash transfer of 5,577 rupees is made, then the farmers will maintain the same output and will not have to compromise. But again, this estimate was very close to Dr. Ramesh Chand, 7,000 per hectare, and Gulati, 6,000 to 7,500 per hectare. So our estimate was pretty close to them based on the NSS data. But again, there are so many challenges in the implementation of DBT, especially in states like, eastern states, Uttarakhand, where, challenges of climate change have been happening. States like Uttar Pradesh, which are two, there are so much, variation in the climate, variation in the soil, and variation across the productivity, states across the productivity. So it's like, not easy. So I'm just, giving food for thought that how do we go about income support? There's a lot of pressure from WTO also to shift from price support to income support. Within our country also, subsidies have been like a hot potato, not very efficient. So how do we go about it? These are some of the researchable issues which we have to really find out to say that, how do we go about the input subsidy? We have to have land records. We have to have, ready, farmers have to have ready cash with the, to buy because they are not going to get subsidy. So one has to really find out to what extent this kind of income support would be inclusive in terms of women farmers. There are 5 to 6 crores women farmers. There are tenants also, but they won't be able to, get any kind of subsidy right now. But if we shift from price support to income support, will they be part of this? That is a very big question which we have to really, think. And then another issue is that if subsidy is given from developed states to underdeveloped states, what would be the, implementation issue and how one redistribution can happen. So these are some of the issues and some of the challenges. We don't have answer to it, but we need to do research on this to find out how we can shift from price support to income support in the long run for the benefit of the farmers. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seema. You have stuck to the time. Thank you so much. So we will now move on to the next speaker. But what Dr. Seema has brought out as per her topic, prioritization of investments. So I think that that is the take home, that there are states and there are also sectors where we need to prioritize to bring in greater egalitarianism across the country. So I think that's a very good study that you have done, and thank you very much for that. And the last question that you have left, yes, income support versus price support. This has been a long pending debate. But I guess that as we move towards greater awareness among the farmers, greater penetration of digital technology, it will be income support that will be much more egalitarian than the price support. But price support is unequal. Indo-Gangetic Plain, for example, they benefit the most from the price supports and they continue to support. The rain-fed areas, which are 52% of India's arable land, they get not even 1/4 of the subsidy support that the irrigated farmer gets. So I guess income support would be the best way to ensure equality or equitability. Thank you so much. So we shall move to the next paper by Yelumalai Kannan, who is professor, once again, from Jawaharlal Nehru University. And he also was teaching at our institute before he moved on to JNU. He is a doctorate in agricultural economics, and he has won several awards. He has also collaborated with various international organizations. And then he has several peer-reviewed publications. So would be looking forward to listening to you, Dr. Kannan. His topic is improving livelihoods from successful value chains. I think that's the next thing. From production, we move to the post-harvest management. So value chain in hill and mountain regions. Of course, value chain will also include production segment, but then more importantly, the post-harvest management. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Dr. Anjani for making me part of these important panel discussions. So I took liberty to change the title as improving livelihoods through sustainable value chain.
Okay,
It's not a successful, but as a sustainable value
Yeah,
chain.
okay.
And I'm not going to suggest here any specific value chain in the context of hill and mountain regions, but a general overview, taking a particular crop. I hope that will be relevant for other fruit crops as well. So let me just move. It's a part of the study that we did in as a value chain analysis for mango. So some insights on the value chain analysis for mango that we thought may be useful for other fruit crops such as pomegranate or banana grown in mountain or hilly regions. And hence, I thought I'll take this particular example and just discuss about it. So as we know, as a product moves from one transaction stage to another, and it gains value along the supply chains. And supply chain analysis is a bit complex because each product has a unique supply chain, and among many factors, it is the product attributes, seasonality, and market access determines the length of the supply chains. As I said, there are complexities in the analysis of value chains, and these complexities arise from the fact that in agriculture, we face a kind of dual market structure comprising both formal and informal market structures. The formal market structure, which is now we can characterize as a kind of oligoponic structures, where a few agro-business firms dominate and determine the price for certain commodities. And we have huge informal markets where large number of players in terms of producers and then buyers exist. So this kind of a complex market structures in agriculture and interlinked market transactions, and because it's not in terms of the input market and output market functioning independently, and there is a close interactions between these two markets affect the efficient price discovery mechanisms, and therefore it raises complexity in analysis. And there are many variations within the formal market structures, like if you take contract farming, and there are different variants of it, and also different governance modes within the value chain that we observe. And due to presence of high transaction cost, transport and storage cost, and also smaller output by the farmers, producers may choose a particular node within the value chains or particular form of contracting system in order to maximize their incomes. And the same logic could also apply to traders, because everyone in the chain would like to maximize their income and spread the risk among the actors along the value chain. As I said, we take an example of mango to just give a specific case, and some insights from this or lessons from this could be applicable or can be utilized for other crops as well. Why we have taken mango? Mango is just a short duration market. Mango, the output has very short duration market, just for 3 months. And it has a unique and several special features, as we will discuss briefly. And as I said, these value chains are highly complex and includes more than one channel with various actors and their corresponding functions, which in fact affects the performance of the value chain itself. There are large number of actors concentrated both at the downstream as well as the upstream end, and hence affecting the overall the performance of the value chains. In between, there are there are quite few number of players specialized in the processing activities. In case of mango, the pulp processing industry also part of these value chains. There are 4 different types of chains that we observed in our study area, that is in Karnataka. The first one, which is a cooperative-led chain, the horticultural producers and processing, marketing and supply the cooperative system, which has the registered growers from whom directly they procure and sell to the consumers. And the second value chain which we have is that the fresh mango is handled by the pre-harvest contractors, which has of two types. That's at the pre-flowering stage or the post-flowering stage. And this particular system has some kind of the risk-sharing mechanisms in terms of input cost sharing or the credit relations. Here the mangoes are handled by the commission agents who in turn sell to the wholesale traders, and from the wholesale traders it goes to the processors or exporters from the APMC markets, and then in turn to the retail traders and the consumers. There is some complexities involved in it. I'll just discuss briefly. The third important chain that we have is the APMC, that is the government market-led chain, where the wholesalers are the important players, the key players, from whom the commodity flows either through to the processors and the exporters or to retail traders and then finally to the consumers. The fourth one we have, again, a cooperative-led system, which is a SAFL and subsidiary of the mother dairy, also deals directly with the farmers as well as the consumers. So there are four different types of the value chain that we observed. To make it brief, when you compare these four different value chains, the cooperative-led value chain, the farmers are the major beneficiaries. In fact, the average price received by the farmers was relatively high in the cooperative-led value chains as compared to the other two types, followed by pre-harvest contract and then the government market-led the value chains. So the cooperatives, the farmers received approximately about 20 rupees per kilogram, followed by 17 rupees per kilogram in case of pre-harvest contracts and then the APMC markets. Just let me take you briefly some issues that makes this analysis complex across these value chains, which we think probably applicable to the other fruit crops as well. If you take the cooperative-led value chains, where, as I said, there is a direct procurement of the produce, which is a mango, from the member farmers and then sale to the consumers. And just we have seen the average price received by the farmers in this chain is much higher than the other chain. However, the participation of farmers in this particular chain is low for various reasons. One is the strict enforcement of quality standards by the cooperative agency, and hence there is a high rate of rejection of the commodity. And this particular, the chain has also limited amount of commodity that procure every day. There is a cap on the quantity of mangoes that procure. However, the large farmers with adequate capital and in terms of facilities such as pack house and ripening chambers tend to participate in this particular value chains. And hence, what we infer from here is that the small farmers or the medium orchards find it difficult to participate in this chain because of the capital requirement to own a pack house or the ripening chambers. In case of the pre-harvest contract, which is very widely used, the chain, where the risk is shared among the actors along the chain, and pre-harvest contract of two types. As I said, one is the pre-flowering stage, which means before flowering, the contracting arrangement takes place between the producers and the buyers, and then post-flowering stage or the fruiting stage. So there are two types. Of these two types, the high proportion of farmers prefer pre-flowering stage as compared to the post-flowering stage. Why is it so? If you take the post-flowering stage contract, the terms of contract are basically the fixed cash rent for a specific harvesting period, which is for 3 months. No cost sharing of inputs, which means the risk is not shared between the producers and the traders. And the traders own the entire harvest in this case. Yeah.
Please everybody to sit down. Please don't go out.
Yeah. So here,
This will be discouraging the speakers. So I know that students are eager to get back to their hostel, but do have some patience. You can ask some questions at the end of the session. Thank you. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So in this kind of
Please sit down.
contracting relations, traders bear both production and the marketing risk. So our econometric analysis basically shows the large size contract, higher asset value of the capital, proximity to the market, and the longer years of trading relation, this is an important variable that we found, determine the choice of the post-flowering stage contract over the pre-flowering stage contract, because the entire, the produce or the risk of it is handled by the trader themselves. In case of the pre-flowering stage contract, it may be, for example, other crops, if you take, like pomegranate is an example, right? Is executed in both oral as well as in the written form. As the oral contract has its own risk, because the oral contracting relations takes place on mutual trust between the farmers and the traders. We found that traders often breach the agreement and renege on their payment on fixed cash rent, which is generally made in installments. We also observe there are incidents of disputes between the farmers and traders. In most cases, the farmers who suffer significant loss because of the delayed harvesting and the over-ripening. Written contract, it's really good, works very well, but only a few farmers enter into the written contracting arrangements. But who does this? Is again, only the farmers with the high capital and can invest in infrastructure facilities and so on. But what is quite interesting in this kind of relations, despite the limitations, that there is a lineage of contract in terms of payment, but the high cost of plucking and the transportation and delayed payment in the government markets and high rejection rates, the farmers tend to go with this pre-flowering stage contract. But the credit relations with the pre-flowering contract stage, it's really regressive because of the imperfections of the rural credit market. Since rural credit markets are not performing well, and therefore farmers tend to rely on these traders, who in turn force the farmers to sell their produce to the contractors. And hence, I think this has its own problems. In terms of the third one, briefly, the APMC-led value chains. As in the case of grain market, the wholesale traders are the key players, as we just discussed. If the traders collude and fix the price in the night for the commodity which will arrive in the next morning, the traders' lobby do not allow auctioning to take place in the market. And hence, farmers face asymmetric information about the price and also the market conditions. In this case, farmers bear the entire risk, price risk, as well as the market risk, right? Finally, if you take the fourth channel, it is also a cooperative-led channel, which is SAFL, and there is a direct procurement from the farmers, but the quantity procured is very small in nature, smaller amount. And this channel provides a better price, transparency in transactions, and the timely payment. But the problem, again, the participation of farmers in this particular chain is also very low for reasons which we already discussed. So the implications of this analysis, not just only for the mango, but other crops, other fruit crops as well, that the government and cooperatives offer better marketing services, but they pre-select farmers who have a capital and can meet quality standards, right? And hence the exclusion of those resource-poor farmers who cannot meet these requirements. The APMC-led, which is the government, again the market-led, the value chain, is riddled with inefficient price discovery mechanisms, whereas the pre-harvest contracts helps to spread the risk among the actors in the chain, but the interlinked transactions, basically the transactions between the credit and the output market, create unequal contractual relations between the producers and the traders. So the way out could be, which is there in the domain now in the recent times, is a collective actions through farmers producer organizations can provide us some promising results, but there are challenges as well, but there are very good examples also to make it sustainable. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Kannan has highlighted that ultimately, if we want to move away from government-led price support, which Dr. Seema was talking about, shifting to income support, on the marketing side, the farmers would be able to transact in the market only when they have the financial muscles. And that is the biggest weakness in our country. Till we take steps to strengthen them financially through various instruments, we will continue to render them vulnerable to the market forces. So this is what brings out, has been brought out very clearly. So thank you very much, Dr. Kannan. So friends, we shall move. And once again, I make an appeal to all of you, particularly the students, not to move out. I understand that it has been a very tiring day, but I think it's a very relevant theme that we are discussing, and we shall open it to Q&A session also. So do introspect the kind of questions that you want to ask and put our speakers on the mat. Okay. So let's move on to the next speaker, Dr. Mamta Pradhan. So she, as you know, is from the IFPRI, who has hosted our lunch today. And that's not the reason, of course. So to briefly say about Dr. Mamta, she is a research coordinator in development strategies and governance unit, and she's a scholar in development researching social sciences. That is very important, and she has been part of the various large-scale observational, experimental studies and impact evaluations assessing the links across agriculture, nutrition, health. This is very important. Entire food system, that means from a food system perspective. What I really appreciated from her brief CV is that her PhD thesis involved research and understanding the demand side of the social protection programs and specifically focused on the case of public distribution system. And as you know, India runs the biggest public distribution system in the world. And then another aspect that I really appreciated was that her research has frequently utilized NetMap. It is a participatory interview method for mapping power and networks. And I think in Himalayan regions, mountainous regions, this is the most important tool that you can have. So thank you very much, Dr. Mamta. And now I invite you to speak on improving livelihoods from integrating climate resilience with economic gains in agriculture. It's yours, Mamta.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dalwai, for that kind introductions. And esteemed co-panelists, we have in audience also Dr. Sachin. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to conduct this panel discussion. So the title of my presentation is Integration of Economic Gains with Climate Resilience in Agriculture. So if you read the title, it says about how do you integrate economic gains in climate resilience. It's actually an euphemism for climate-smart agriculture. So as Lincoln said, you know, the best way to predict future is to create it. So climate-smart agriculture actually falls in that rubric. So if you desegregate climate-smart agriculture, it's by definition how CSA is being defined, is that it involves adopting practices, technologies, helping agri-food systems to adapt to climate change, reduce risks, and boost profitability. So economic gain and profitability is already ingrained when we talk about climate-smart agriculture. How it is perceived or understood by the researchers, it depends on the different perspectives, it depends on the different frameworks. But the framework that we look into is kind of looking at different aspects of linking climate resilience or climate or environment with livelihoods. You have to link it with the development, you have to link it with economy, and how each of these are kind of interrelated. So climate-smart agriculture, to sum up, actually increases productivity, it enhances resilience, it reduces greenhouse emissions at one level, or it kind of delivers other environmental goods like water conservation, biodiversity, etc., which kind of in a package leads to the economic gain. So what I'll be talking about is giving an example of a huge large-scale project that IFPRI, in which we were involved, is about a consortium for scaling up climate-smart agriculture in South Asia. And it involved all the South Asian countries. The project was on scaling up of climate-smart agriculture technologies. And there is huge lessons to learn from this, which can be generic, but the principles kind of apply to all the regions or the areas. So we also looked at Bhutan, and we had looked at Nepal also, which has implication for mountain and hilly regions. So it could have some implications for Uttarakhand as well. So when we started with this project, we wanted to scale up climate-smart agriculture technology in the South Asia region. But in doing so, we went through a huge process of prioritization. We looked at all the countries. There was a huge number of climate-smart agriculture technologies. We used the World Bank Index to kind of come up with 3 best practices that can be scaled up. And it was a process that also involved validation processes in terms of participatory research, etc. While we thought of, scaling up this climate-smart agriculture, we came across a huge constraints in adoption itself, leave alone adoption at scale, which is scaling up of climate-smart agricultures. Of course, it relates to farm structures because we are a South Asia smallholder dominant area. We have low access to credit. Cost structure of CSA's fixed to variable cost ratios are high. Social and institutional networks, etc. But the big piece that was kind of missing was the lack of markets and the demand pull, and the leveraging this agriculture value chain transformation where the most value is generated. I think this is most important when we talk about climate-smart agriculture and how do we integrate the economic gains. So the main draws were from scaling up of these countries was generically, as I said, the market was missing. So first you have to create value before you distribute value. So that's the most fundamental aspect of climate-smart agriculture. It's very important, but it's very hardly realized or understood, and hence it's not quite emphasized in climate-smart agriculture. So the issue is about the mechanism design issues. So please make them more economically viable and more attractive. So we need to really think through, if you're trying to integrate economic gains with climate resilient or climate smart agriculture, what role would freer markets play? So there is a need to system to differentiate CSA versus non-CSA. We have to find that economic link. We have to create that value. So there has to be product differentiations in terms of CSA products. Do we have that? There's no value creation. So when we talk of climate smart agriculture, that's where we fail when we think of scaling up. And it's always based, I heard a lot about subsidy, but it's always based on subsidy. But subsidy will hit the roof sooner or the later. So there are fiscal constraints. So, we are a small economy-driven countries. So we have to think, how do you make CSA more economically viable? How do you create reward systems? Because for now, there is no compensation for climate-smart agriculture. So at the core, when we talk about this whole issue of value creation in CSA products, and we are talking about market and hilly regions, I also wanted to highlight that at the granular level, in mountain and hill economy, we do have to look at climate justice. At the core, when we talk about climate smart agriculture, whether we talk about mitigation, we talk about adaptation strategies, at the core is the climate justice issue. So while we talk about the issue of value creation products and practices and preservation through differentiation and awareness, it's very essential that we also take cognizance of the issue that the climate justice is a huge, huge issue that will come up or that has started coming up. Next is about when we think of integrating economic gains with climate resilience, I think what is missed now and has started gaining some kind of traction is about carbon markets. So when we think of sustainable climate smart agriculture, and you want to create a value, economic value in it, these are some of the points that we need to emphasize. There are all these mundane policies which are made, which are climate sensitive. We need to monetize it. We need to monetize climate smart agriculture. Level the playing field in terms of we are giving an MSP for paddy and rice, we are giving an MSP for millets, but at the same time, we are increasing the MSP for rice and paddy. Of course, the Of course, the farmers will move away from the millets. So level the playing field. Then this is very important in terms of we are living in a very smallholder-dominated region, that how do you really address the relative risk distribution? So focus on the relative returns as well as the relative risk profiles, because we think that adoption kind of happens in a vacuum. It does not, because a farmer, to move away from the traditional to a climate-smart agriculture, it has to be relatively risk averse. Then we have to think about addressing risk preferences. Smallholder farmers are not only just risk averse, they're also loss averse. So we have to take cognizance of that. Then the biggest one of the element is understanding the market access. I think this is one of the term that is so misused or misunderstood amongst us in terms of when we think of market access, we think that we increase the roads, we increase the transportation, and that automatically the markets kind of improve. But as it is, when you increase market access, is kind of also a big source of risk, which we need to internalize. And because that kind of creates a competition. It creates volatility, it creates a risk. So how do we kind of adjust or kind of take into cognizance the risk is what is important. Of course, the trading and policy certainly has to play a pivotal role. With every climate shock, we have all this export bans that goes on. So when we talk about agri-food system, it's very, very complex. So if you're talking about climate-smart agricultures, the policies play a very, very important role. So policies can have an attenuation effect or it can have a reinforcement effect. Attenuation effect in the sense it can negate what you are doing. For the example I gave about the MSP in rice and the MSP in millet. And the policies should be more for ecosystem services. We don't have that. We don't reward the ecosystem services in terms of farmers who are doing pulses or coarse cereals. Then this whole economics of biofuel, that is something that we need to understand, which is full system of all the ethanol and the MSP and the procurement that kind of goes around. So if you're thinking of climate-smart agriculture, if you're thinking of integrating an economic link, I think integrated approach of looking at environment and climate and development in conjunction is more important. So these are, when I talked about carbon markets, I also want to raise the issues of some of the challenges in agri-credits. Also, this is a study by Icarniap, and these are maybe some of the ideas for the mountain and hill economy. When we talk about agri-credits, we have to ensure additionality. There has to be the issue of credit reversal. There is the uncertainty of standards and verification methods. Of course, the double counting goes, land tenancy, carbon credit rights, high upfront costs for shifting to new practices, and of course, the possible trade-offs and the lack of transparency in benefiting sharing. Some bit about the mountain and hill economy, which is most vulnerable to climate change. You know, climate mitigation in agriculture and allied activities, they pertain mostly to the reduction of non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gases. While the agriculture sector contributes about nearly 22% of the global GHGs, what is the comparative case in the mountain and hilly areas? I think that's what something that we need to think through, whether there is a need for a policy alignment or not. Climate mitigation in agriculture has focused on reduction of nitrous oxide emissions from the use of fertilizers, reduction of methane emissions from rice, reduction of nitrous oxide and methane through livestock manure management, etc. So this could be a case, given that it's a mountain and hilly region, this could be a case of for MHE. And the third bit is about, when we looked at all the climate-smart agriculture technologies like AWD, that is alternate wetting and drying, DSR, which is widely used, can the state take it up and see if this can be rewarded? So the thing is, when we think about integrating economic gains with climate resilience, there is a whole lot of policy support elements that is needed. You need the Seed Act, you need the Biodiversity Act, food and nutritional policies, forest policies, trade policies at all levels and stages in gains, green trade domestically and internationally. And our study finds that we have really, really high barriers in CSA. And this is the example of the high trade barriers that the study has been. I don't want to focus it here. Look at this whole landscape of the import duty of CSA technology in the South Asia region. Look at the India's number and look at Bangladesh and other countries. No wonder Bangladesh has, gone up to the mechanization of agriculture. And the last piece is that we have to look at border in equipment and machineries. I mean, in terms of we issues risks of food safety, which is something kind of similar to what this can be applicable to here. So the take-home message is, if we are looking at integrating economic gains with climate resilience, we need greater trade and investment, which Dr. Devesh Roy, who is a trade economist, will talk more about it. When you think about scaling up climate-smart agriculture, roll backwards from market creation. First, secure markets and CSA-based differentiations. And the third bit is about deepening of inputs and exchange. That's about seeds and equipment. There should be efforts to engage the private sector in building business models as a potential for scaling up pathways. And the scaling programs can really, really maximize synergies and leverage resources by adopting a very, very robust partnership model. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mamta. You have really pinpointed the issues relating to the Himalayan region. Thank you so much, and I appreciate, and I'm sure all of you would appreciate, that before you distribute, we need to create values. I think that's a very, not just a catchy phrase, but it carries a lot of meaning. And there is certainly a difference between climate resilient agriculture and climate smart agriculture. So resilience is a subcomponent of the climate smart agriculture, and that's what you have highlighted. And the most important takeaway for all of us here is eco-compensation. That ecological services that the Himalayan region provide not just to India, but to the entire region and in a way to the world, they need, the farmers and also the non-farmers need to be paid eco-service compensation. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think you need big claps for this. I swear, because that's very important one. It asks for a demand, it demands a change in the government policies at the foundational level. Okay, we will talk about it more, and I'm sure if you have any issues to join, you can join later on. Thank you very much. So we shall now move to Dr. Devesh Roy, who is a senior research fellow, and he, as Dr. Mamta was saying, he'll be carrying forward the discussion. He'll be speaking to us on trade opportunities for improving livelihoods in hill and mountain regions. And to share briefly about him, he's a senior research fellow in the Development Strategies and Governance Unit here at Delhi, of course, now. His areas of expertise include international trade, environment, firm farm linkages, very important for hilly regions, and food safety. He has recently been involved in research related to the economics of animal disease outbreaks. He also conducts research on issues relating to food safety in developing countries, particularly from the demand side, and is involved in a project on varietal choice pertaining to different staples in India and Rwanda and Nigeria too. And he has been with IFPRI since 2004, and his previous work focused on food security in South Asian countries, as well as contract farming, which Dr. Kannan spoke about. High-value agriculture in India. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Maryland in College Park and a master's from Delhi School of Economics. So Devesh, after hearing you at Nepal, I look forward to personally listening to you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's basically that, I'm talking about something which is generally an afterthought that comes when people talk about food systems in India. It is actually trade. And what I'm going to do, what Professor Bharat Rameswamy calls as the economist's anthem. So it basically, what is the thing that we celebrate, and what is for which we have an anthem. This is about those things. And, and part of, for the introduction that Dr. Dalwai did, actually he could have just defined me more granularly. I'm also an economist, I'm a trade economist, because I take that very seriously, and that's why I'm presenting here. So the idea is that, if you look at this, the title is Trade Opportunities for Improving Livelihoods in Hill and Mountain Regions. So, so there are a lot of, elements here. One is trade opportunities, improving livelihood, hill and mountain regions, and that's a bit of a difficult issue for a trade economist, because those who are economists here would know that the trade is a general equilibrium concept. You will never find randomized controlled trials in trade, because trade is a general equilibrium concept. You cannot control the environment. You always have to see natural experiment. So starting from that point, and whether it is something that you can do specifically for mountain and hill regions, it's not going to work, because it's going to be connected with all the links, with all possible trade linkages, all possible trade costs. And this is how, you have to look at it from that general equilibrium perspective, as we say in economics. So just to, because this is our job description for the session, that we have to talk about mountain and hill economy. So let me just start with, when World Bank did a report on mountain and hill economy. So the first line in that report is that it is said that the only thing more beautiful than mountains is more mountains. Okay? So the idea is that, now you can, and you go back to what, Mamta was talking about, that we need to actually move towards value creation. There are only any of those things that we're doing. And so we are going to look at this whole thing about trade. And let me just warn before we say, my trade does not, I have never used the term international trade. Trade happens at all levels. And this is what we are going to do in this presentation, is just actually address those binaries which are kind of flawed when you try to understand the role of trade in economics, in livelihoods, or any of that bit. So these are all the things that people know, that now this is just, just a bit of information that, the International Day of Mountains is exactly 2 months away from here. It's on December 12th. Today is October 12th, right? And and you said, what we're going to do is basically a bit like the economist's anthem. And we just come from that perspective. So let me just tell you, which is a bit of an occupational hazard. And I start this, that no region, no place in the world has scale heights of success without being a big trader. You can go to any point in human civilization, be it the Romans, be it what is happening in success of all Koreas, China, whichever you look at. You can, it's almost like a challenge statement. You come up with a single example where these economics heights have been scaled without being a very big trader. So even if you if you drill down to the sub-national level, like to a regional level, saying this is a mountain and hill region, you will have to think about how do you really leverage trade if you want to scale new heights. And so that's what we're saying, that, the one big element that becomes different from a trade economist perspective, what I've written is DTT to DTC to BTC ratio is higher. Now, DTC is domestic trade costs, and the BTC is the border trade costs. So most of the time, people really focus on, what is the tariff? Now you're thinking there's so much of Trump tariffs, there's so much of discussion. But there is a lot of domestic trade costs. How to get to the port, what is the time to clear the port, how is the time to reach the port, what are the costs involved, And these are time to trade and cost to trade elements. And these domestic trade costs turn out to be comparatively high when you look at the mountain and hill economies. So that's one big distinction that you will get there. So as I said that there, this presentation, we are trying to really, when we look at it, what are the prospects of trade? And we say trade, and I said trade has to be at all levels. So we say there are some flawed binaries that people deal with in policy and in research. So one is this thing that we say people, when you say trade, people think international trade. Trade happens at all levels, every day, everywhere. And people on the other side talk about food systems, agri-food system. If you are in a system, then all of these things have to be integrated. That means domestic trade or international trade, they have to be looked together. As a seller, I have to make a choice whether I sell domestically or internationally or regionally, globally. If I'm buying, the same calculations will work, and so on. And the second binary, which, you will have heard this thing that somebody is a value chain expert, somebody is a trade expert. Value chains and trade are different is another flawed binary. Trade actually takes place through value chains. And there is the third binary that, when you think in context of trade, is that agriculture, food is different than manufacturing, services, and so on. It's same, very differentiated. Lot of the calculation that go in terms of production attributes and other attributes, they also determine and play a role in agriculture and food trade. And that is how you will think of their roles in terms of, so trade has expanded massively, that this is, but one of the things that if you look at, because we are in a development context, and this is a stylized fact, that productivity, and so now trade, as we said, that trade and value chains are not disparate concepts. Trade takes place through value chains. And so now the country that, you'll find this is a stylized fact, that countries or regions which have been able to integrate more deeply into those global value chains in trading, they have tended to realize biggest productivity and income increases. So if you go to China and look at the trade data, there is hardly any line or item that China does not trade. And when I say trade is not only about exporting, it's about exporting or importing. And that is another thing that, in global value chains, you have to think about looking at imports and exports together. And so if you now take this, if you now, we are taking the case of this will apply, and I said that this binary between agriculture, food, and then manufacturing services is also a flawed binary. But we are just anchoring on the agriculture and food for the case that we want to present here. So these are a lot of things that you look at specifically to the mountain and hill economies, which can actually lead to the thing that we say about the similarity between agriculture and manufacturing and services, and those binaries being flawed. You can look at all those things and which can play a role. So, and you have to create value, and that is the. So even, I'm not going to spend time on this because Mamta has already talked about this. So where is the value that's, when you think about from there is also where you look at carbon markets. And these might be the biggest place, mountain and hill economy, the MHEs, that can really leverage the carbon market. And the carbon credit markets in India, especially in agriculture, and she put on those pictures, are really small. I mean, there's a lot of, and MHE are a big part of it, that they really sit on a unused. So if you now look at we say trade now takes place through, and remember that global value chains, the India or all the regions in India are also part of globe. So global value, like if you take the case of semiconductors, US is a part of the big global value chains, but out of those 50 states in the US, 46 states participate in the value chain of semiconductors production, chips here and there. And so a lot of it, and then it goes to Taiwan or somewhere else, or wherever it gets made. So now in India itself, within India, when you participate across state, different locations, you really specialize based on your comparative advantage. And that's what you have to see for the mountain and hill economies. And that will actually, you will have to work with the global value chain perspective. So one big example, if you look at it from look at India's spices trade, and India exports like about $4 billion worth of spices, and then China exports about $16 billion worth of spices, out of which 2 billion or something plus comes from India in terms of chilies and other spices. It processes it, converts them into seasoning, sends it to McCormick, then it sells it to the world. And this is how this, your participation in global value chain. So for the mountain and hill economies, it's not about participation. It's also about positioning. I come from Bihar, which, we have a big success story of makhana there, that everybody says. Now, makhana, but how much of the processing of makhana is being done apart from primary processing in Bihar? How much gets done outside Bihar? And where is the value concentrated? That things that we are coming up with an article showing that, how it is distributed and how, it is not well positioned in the value chain. And these are the issues that we need to address. And so I just will conclude. So now if you look at that, there is Nepal, and you can learn a lot from how global value chains or the principles of global value chain participation and positioning can actually be used for, making or scaling up the trade potential. And then there's cases where Nepal had such potential in coffee, totally lost out. Vietnam had just starting from almost ground zero, it went all the way up, and it's like one of the prime producers and so on. And I talked about this. So this is now, let me just conclude that, so we are in globalization 2.0. It's not the first globalization 1.0, which was based on steamship and, the steam power that brought it about. It's about technology, the ICT and all, which is about your global value chain. So that we need to leverage here. And this is the things that, when you think about this whole global value chain principles, those two last bit that, these are basically, Apple, everything, the iPhone goes through so many countries before it becomes an iPhone. But the biggest value is concentrated in the US because they do the research and development. And so you have to bring in those same principles when you deal with the agriculture and use the global value chain principles in order to leverage this. And these have a lot of element of services. If you look at IBM 60% exports are not computers, or it's actually services. So this is called servicification. And we need to bring, and that's what if you look at the case of Thailand, for instance. You can also look for different Chile, and so you'll see a lot of servicification of agri-food exports. So I will not go, I'll just stop here, but I just wanted to, because we did at IFPRI, we did this big projects with BIMSTEC, which is a Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sector technical and economic cooperation. And they actually added an element of their, plan of action and for cooperation among members, which is about mountain and hill economy. And they have actually some really key priorities and other things that they were highlighted that, I could just refer you to this piece of work. And then you can just look at and how some of the principles that they identify, and for looking at leveraging markets for these mountain and hill economies, that could be applicable to really at the national as well as subnational levels. So I'll just, this is the plan of action. I can say I'll just refer to them, but that is what I thought would be relevant, because the one which they have on leveraging markets at all levels in order to address the issues in mountain and hill economy could be a bit of the plan of action that one could really look at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Devesh. You have very clearly clarified on what is the meaning of trade. Many a time we think trade means only international trade, whereas India is the biggest tradable market that we have today. So thank you very much. And you rightly pointed out that the supply chain is only a subset of value chain. And it is the major challenge in mountainous regions to build supply chains and value chains. And you have rightly asked for a policy. I think that's the takeaway for the organizers, that we need a special policy on value chain building for the mountainous regions. So thank you very much, and you have proved that you really are passionate and professional about trade. So we come to the last speaker of the day, and the youngest among all of us here, right? Kriti Sharma, who is a research analyst at IFPRI, and she was very shy of writing about herself, and she simply says she's working as a research analyst at IFPRI on India's agricultural issues, such as credit access and technology adoption among farmers. She has previously worked as a researcher at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, and she is a master's in economics and a right candidate to talk about the issues relating to mountainous regions. The credit issue was brought out very firmly by Dr. Seema Bathla. Okay, go ahead, Kriti.
Okay, thank you, sir, and good evening, everyone. So I'll be talking about gender dimensions of time use in agriculture in hill and mountain regions. So this work is based on time use survey NSS data of 2024, which is pretty recent. So these are pretty new insights. So since we will be talking about time use in agriculture, let us begin by understanding the usual principal activity status in hill and mountain regions of India. So you will see that majority of the top categories that emerge include self-employment, attending to domestic duties, and attending the educational institutions. The trend across India is almost similar to hill and mountain regions, except a minor difference that self-employment is slightly higher in hill and mountain regions. Now we group these activities into 4 categories, which is work, domestic chores, learning, and leisure. And again, we compare it across both the genders as well as hill and mountain regions and India. And we see that, like very typically, men are have significantly higher participation in work in comparison to women, whereas women have significantly higher participation in household chores as compared to men. Another difference that we note across regions is that both men and women from hill and mountain regions are actively participating in work in comparison to overall Indian picture. That is due to multiple reasons. First is the regional economy. Second is distress work due to difficult terrain, as well as social and cultural reasons as well. So the same trend is reflected in time use patterns also. So men actually spend 300 minutes per day in working, whereas women spend the same amount of time in household chores. If you compare the ratio of paid to unpaid work, you will see that men are at a significant advantage than women. And you will also notice that hill and mountain regions are at a disadvantage in comparison to overall Indian picture. So why is that? You know, we notice that the time allocation of work is same between India as well as hill and mountain regions, and yet the ratio of paid to unpaid time in work is lower in hill and mountain regions. So this basically denotes that more people of hill and mountain regions are involved in informal and low productivity work as compared to overall picture. Next, we see that these disparities between genders are slightly lower in northeastern states of Sikkim, Manipur, and Meghalaya. Now we focus specifically on agriculture and non-agriculture sector, where we see that majority of the men are actually participating in non-agricultural activities, whereas among women, the trend is slightly different in hill and mountain regions and India. For example, in India, the females are participating more in agriculture, and in hill and mountain regions, they are at par between agriculture and non-agriculture work. Among states, you will see an outlier, which is Nagaland, which has a very high participation in agriculture for both males and females. Now, again, we calculate the ratio of paid to unpaid time used in agriculture and non-agriculture sector. So here, first of all, we have differences in the sector. So non-agriculture sector is seen to pay higher. And again, we note the gender differences where women are at a disadvantage in this ratio as well. And the third difference that we notice is that between hill and mountain regions as well as India, the only difference is emerging is in the agriculture sector. The non-agriculture trend is same across hill and mountain regions and in India. So in the earlier slide, you had noted that Nagaland had very high participation in agriculture, but here you will notice that the paid to unpaid time use ratio is very low in Nagaland in agriculture, which basically indicates that despite higher participation, they do not have a very high paid time, which means that agricultural sector is somewhat low productivity and low paying sector and needs, like everyone here highlighted, we need to increase incomes in agriculture. Now within agriculture, there are 4 sectors, which is crops, livestock, forestry, and fisheries. So you will notice that majority of the participation is in the crop sector, followed by livestock, then forestry, and then fisheries. And these trends are pretty similar across hill and mountain regions as well as India. However, you will notice that women are leading in participation in livestock as well as forestry. For this also, we calculate the ratio of paid to unpaid time in work. So the trend is pretty similar, but within the sector, you will see that crop pays more, followed by fisheries. And once again, women are seen to be at a disadvantage. And within regions, hill and mountain regions are seen to be at a disadvantage in comparison to India. So basically, the region definitely needs focus. So what really, what are the factors that really determine the participation as well as time use in work in agriculture as well as non-agriculture? We did a small empirical investigation, and these were the factors that came out. You've already seen that gender was a major factor impacting how individuals allocate their time. Then there's age. So increased age actually leads to higher allocation of time in work because of increased household responsibilities. Then social group, there were certain disparities, like certain social groups such as STs and SCs were at a disadvantage. Similarly, education, so what happens with education? As education increases, the time used in work decreases because education enables people to access jobs that are well-paying and high productivity, and they have availability of time for other activities that could be leisure or learning or other stuff. So to conclude that gender disparities in participation and paid time persist across sectors and activities even in 2024, or you could say 2025. Female work remains undervalued and invisible. Transition from farm to non-farm employment was more prevalent among men, and you also saw that non-farm employment paid better than farm employment. What are the factors that actually lead to this? Intergenerational inequity has been there. Then there has been a lack of opportunities among women, unfavorable social dynamics for women. So corrective action is needed. Shared domestic duties as well as gender-sensitive policies can help. When we compare the regions, hill and mountain regions continue to allocate disproportionately higher time to unpaid as well as underpaid activities, affecting the economies of these regions negatively. These disparities also limit the visibility in economic statistics. So regional interventions must address these structural divides for inclusive rural growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priya. It was very important that this particular topic was included, the gender dimensions. Where we tend to think that both men and women are equal. That's not true in reality. And as you rightly pointed out, first is farm sector itself is at a disadvantage vis-a-vis the non-farm sector. And within the farm sector, as well as the non-farm sector, the women are at a greater disadvantage. And without their support at home, no activity can go on, but yet it's all unpaid. So you have brought out very well. Thank you very much, and you really deserve our applause. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go there and now we'll conclude, okay? All right. Is this working here? Okay. All right, friends, we're coming to a close now. I think we'll have a few minutes of Q&A. And now the house is open. So whoever wants to ask, kindly make it very crisp. And then you may also point out the person from whom you would like to get the answer. Okay, let's go ahead now. Yeah, please, go ahead, Professor. Yeah. Can somebody give the mic there?
Thank you very much. There are a lot of issues, and all the panelists made very good presentation on different issues related to agriculture. But first issue is, can we think only, when we think about the livelihood generation and sustainability, can we think only agriculture? Because the panel is highly loaded toward agriculture. This is one issue. Second is, a farmer needs three things. First is adequate incentives to grow farming. Second is sufficient resource base. And third is stable market. We have observed that input prices, as Anjani Kumar ji rightly mentioned, input prices are constantly rising. But what about the output prices? I have seen 1 year the basmati paddy price was 5,000 rupees. Next year it become 2,000 rupees. So, and that is in case of cereal. What to talk about so-called high-value agriculture crops like fruits and vegetables. So these are the three important issues. Another issues are market risk, technology risk, and nature risk. And three challenges are, agriculture is now having knowledge deficit. Where are the youth? We have also calculated, on an average, when we conducted a survey, average size of, average age of farmer is above 40, 45 or up to 50. And knowledge deficit. Second is feminization, and third is aging. So these are the issues, important issues. And coming to the chairman initial remark that we are 75% achievement of doubling the farmer income. I do not know from where this data has been taken. As Anjani Kumar data and myself also did the same kind of work. And I estimated only if you take 2012 and 13 to 18, approximately 6 years. In 6 years, all India basis, farmers' real income increased by 18%. In Uttar Pradesh, we did more rigorous analysis. While taking unit level data, it was 21%. So lot of work has been done, but still these things are very, very, and one important aspect is...
I think we can
Yes.
give a chance to others.
Okay,
Thank you.
Last point. Unless we think about the political economy of agriculture, we would not be able to get answer. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Parmod, yeah, be brief, so that we get more people get an opportunity. Please.
Okay. I have 1 or 2 points for each of the speakers, and
No, not for each of the speakers.
I'll be brief. First point is to Professor Anjani. You have given us the doubling farmers' income. Probably you have taken 2015 to 23. What it calculates is 8 years. The target was 6 years. In any case, farmers' income is going to be doubled. The basic question was the time period. It was target was 5 to 6 years. If you take 8 years, probably we are shifting the goalpost. Yeah, please let me complete. Also, I don't know what is the data period. You said farmer assessment survey, as Singh Saab said, 2018 was the latest round. So farmers' income for 2023 time series, please, if you clarify what data you have used. Seema, about the investment and subsidies priority, I think the real solution is a middle path. I was talking to farmers in Tamil Nadu, in Coimbatore, in Elumalai's place. I just raised the issue of why are we giving subsidy, especially the food subsidy, to 80 crore population. The budget we are spending on food subsidy and probably irrigation subsidy, fertilizer subsidy is somehow justified. But some of these subsidies, I think almost 3 lakh crore we are spending on subsidy. What is required is infrastructure for moving away to high value crops. Where is the market, infrastructure market? I tell you, almost majority of the farmers, they came and they all want, they said, we don't want subsidy. We want it. If the infrastructure comes up, they don't need government support. They can survive at their own. The problem is the government has to take an initiative. Farmers are ready. They are able to trade. They are able to produce. They are able to do all economy. Probably the government policy is on the wrong side, just because of the vote bank. Probably that is the biggest culprit today. The third presentation by Dr. Illumalai. Dr. Illumalai, I think you said cooperative sector, but it picks up only the selective produce. Probably the rejected produce, which it does not take, and which farmers have to sell at a very low price. If you net the price, what you get highest price, probably maybe not competing even with the government APMCs. So probably we need to see those options also.
Dr. Pramod, if you don't mind.
And last point, Okay, I'll just stop here.
Please, yeah. Yeah, because others can also get a chance, that's why, yeah.
Dr. Devasray, very nice presentation on value chains. As we have seen that in many hill states, they produce a number of products. They produce and exports. But we know from the conventional knowledge that margin of trade margin is pretty high in the upstream, in the downstream, and also in the midstream. Could you get any evidences from any state that where such states are pretty good, competitive globally, or in some countries, in terms of exporting midstream and downstream products, so that they can, instead of producing very large number of crops across the globe, they can really minimize and can enhance their profit margin? Thank you.
Yeah, I think Dr. Devesh can respond, and then Dr. Anjani can respond to Dr. Pramod. Yeah.
No, thanks for the question. In global value chain literature, we are always, thinking about whether there is a smile curve or not, where is the value concentrated, right? We look at iPhones and all, we say at the development stage, there's a lot of value, and then in the downstream stage, when they get for sales, and so we are trying to, we're doing this work with Professor Viramani, which actually is trying to look at what kind of a curve, a smile curve or a cry curve, what is there in terms of these agri value chains or agri-food products. So that's the work which we are doing. But so one of the things that we find that, we do not see that there's like if you take a case of, say, the chocolate story, the cocoa is, most of it is being produced in Africa, and it has such a low share of value. Out of $150 billion industry a year, Africa has like 8 and 9 billion. And so we were talking about like the case of spices. It's not the highest value, is not at the initial stage, which is the raw spices. It is more at the seasoning stage or the process stage, where China steps in and it takes in a lot of raw spices from India. So it will be going to be context specific, whether it's going to be like a smile curve, cry curve, or a different kind of a curve, or it's just a U curve or something, which we really have to see at a very granular level. So what we have looked at is just in some spices or some things, but we really need to now, for Bihar, which we're looking at, most of the value is coming in the downstream. So the initial process with the primary process stage is not a lot of value that is there. And that takes place in Bihar. Most of it, the other thing, takes place outside Bihar. And so it will depend on the commodity, and that will be differences. But, once we work with all these different commodities, then it will be a very good point to share, actually, and see what are the heterogeneities. And with the work which we are doing with Professor Viramani, we see there's a lot of heterogeneity where you need to position yourself in the value chain. And so that is, the answer as of now. But it's a very pertinent question that you have, and which we really need to understand on case-by-case basis as we move ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Devesh. So now I'll request Dr. Anjani to answer both of them, Dr. Pramod and Dr. also Mishra, on the same doubling farmers' income.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. First of all, Dr. SPC, I think you have raised very pertinent issues. So, as far as the estimation of doubling of farmers' income is concerned, in fact, if you go through the report of the committee, doubling farmers' income, they have estimated the milestone income, means what will be the level of income, then we can say that the income has doubled. So, we have taken those figures that whether the state has achieved that income or not. And the latest data situation assessment survey was 2018-19. So we have extrapolated based on the growth rate between 2012-13 and 2019. And also we have weighted, means with the agricultural GDP growth rate during this period, 2018-19 to 2022-23. So period was 7 years, so no confusion, only for 7 years, and 7 years was the time that committee also has.
Correct.
So this other issues, I agree that farmers need these incentives, and you know we all are living in uncertain world. We are not knowing that the tariff will become such a kind of issue. So there are, but government and also other policymakers, they are trying with different instruments. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it does not succeed, and sometimes because of misinformation, miscommunication, or bad communication, even the intended reforms we are not able to implement. So that's also there. As far as the retention of youth is concerned, my view is totally different from that. My personal view is that still Indian agriculture is overburdened. More people are, means 48% or 45% of people, working population, are producing 16 or 18% of the value. So it is low productivity. So a lot of people needs to exit agriculture. Yes, it should not be distress-driven exit, but it should pull factor should work. Yeah. More opportunities in non-farm sectors and lucrative. So we should create that kind of conditions, and then once it becomes attractive, other streams of people, youth can go there. And recently, some of the startups, agri startups, they are coming up. Many IT graduates and all, they are coming up. Data, I think Dr. Pramod, I have answered. The data is from the situation assessment and then extrapolation of that. 7 years also that. One more point, sir, which Dr. Seema will supplement also, that investment subsidy. I think the ideal situation is we should make investment. We should go for capital formation, but we know the reality, political economy, and sometimes for brief period subsidy intended also. So, but as far as means, maybe in some of the location farmers are saying that we are not interested in subsidy, we are not interested, but look at the crowd or look at the acceptance of the PM Kisan money or the recent Bihar elections, 10,000 to each woman. You go to the banks branches in Bihar right now and you see the crowd, how many people are going for that. Yeah. So these are things. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just to,
Now
just
I think
to,
Dr. Seema and Dr. Kanan, just be brief in the response to
Thank you.
Pramod.
Just to add, the only submission is that investment is a long-term thing, subsidy is only a cushion. The problem is that, as you rightly said, it's a vote bank, political economy. So our analysis shows that we have to have location-specific or targeted kind of, subsidy. If they don't need it, let it be. They don't need it, they don't need it, because investment is going to pay in the long run compared to spending on subsidy. That is one thing. Second thing is, if we see the budgetary allocation across each state, to your surprise, government is not spending anything on market infrastructure. It's in a very bad state. So they are spending on irrigation, major and medium. They are spending on drip irrigation via Raftar, that is the RKVY program. But as such, there is no spending on investment, very less spending on investment. More and more spending is on revenue account. That is subsidy. So just to tell you that government agriculture R&D spending is less than 1%. It's only 0.4% of GDP. If you compare it with the other countries, it is 2 to 3%. So the state of affairs is not that great in the low income states where more investment is required, more subsidy is required. Unfortunately, it has not been happening, and that is why returns are very, very low in terms of agriculture growth and poverty reduction.
Right.
Rest, politics,
Dr. Kanan, please.
I think two questions. When you talk about livelihood, of course, it's not only agriculture that matters in dealing with the livelihood. Livelihood is a broader concept. And it's not just farm activities, there are a wide range of non-farm activities, assets, opportunities, and then there are mediating factors. So I think we need to look at broad way. I fully agree with that. To Dr. Pramod's question, yes, If you take rejection, the rejected commodities and that price which the farmers received on rejected commodities, and then compute the average price, it will be much lower. However, in our sample, as I said, this system, that SAFL or HOPCOMS that we studied, basically excludes those small growers and mostly included the large growers, and hence the average price that we computed was higher than the other system that we have studied.
Yeah, thank you very much. Friends, we are now closing the Q&A session because we've already crossed the time. I'll be also now substituting for Professor Ramesh Chand, who was supposed to give the concluding remarks. But I'll just take a few minutes. I know I'm testing your patience, but it is, I thought, very important to sum it up. Not necessarily repeating what you people have said, because that has been very well communicated, but I just want to supplement a few things. The first thing is that, when we're talking about livelihood in the Himalayan region, hilly and mountainous region, we need to understand what are the major challenges that this particular region has. I think we need to highlight those things. Now, as it is, any hilly region, any mountainous region has challenges of infrastructure, logistics. It is anywhere in the world. But then the Himalayan region has got very specific challenges. Firstly, because they are all very young hills. Himalayan region have not yet settled down. In fact, those who are measuring Mount Everest and Kanchenjunga point out that the height is actually reducing because they are still settling down. So in such a fragile economy, if we tinker with it indiscreetly, then you can imagine what the challenges are. Second, on account of climate change, there is an exacerbation of the challenges. Now, what is happening? Now, the total precipitation that India receives, 94% is received through rainfall and 6% is received through glacial mountains. Now, Indo-Gangetic Plain, which is supposed to be the food bowl of India, is food bowl only because it receives the glacial water. And now glaciers are actually receding every year. And the estimated the receding is anywhere between 6 meters to 10 meters per year. Over the last 70 years, Kanchenjunga has receded by 70 meters. Of course, there are one or two glaciers which are also expanding, not here but elsewhere. So if they keep receding, just imagine the Himalayan region, which is actually feeding the river system, Ganga, Brahmaputra, all major rivers of India. They are not going to be remaining perennial. So what will be the impact on Indian economy? Kindly think over. Third one is, because of indiscreet planning, indiscreet development, and kind of recklessness with which are actually tackling Himalayan region, there is absolute loss of biodiversity. Himalayan region is home to 10,000 plant species, very, very unique species. It is home to 300 mammal species. It is home to 1,000 bird species. And if we lose biodiversity because there is deforestation, because we are tinkering with this entire ecosystem, then just think what might happen on this. The point of telling you all this is that Himalayan region, which actually ensure that you don't get cold winds from the Asian plateau, and they ensure that water balance is maintained. If we are going to tinker with it, what's going to happen? Not just on the Himalayan regional population, but the entire Indian population. So, when we talk about livelihood in the Himalayan region, we need to remember not only with respect to Himalayan region population, but with respect to the entire Indian subcontinent. The other issue that I would like to highlight is that when you talk about livelihood anywhere, not just in Himalayan region, there are three things. There are three opportunities or three ways they actually conduct their livelihood. One is natural resources based livelihood. Second one is non-natural resource based livelihood. And further, within these two sectors, either they are self-employees or they are working for somebody or they are wage employees. There are three categories. So these are the three sources of livelihood. Now why this is important to understand is, I think one of you talked about Levy's model of economics. Now all of us are particularly economists know, in 1954, the Levy's model of development economics he propounded. What was it? That is, productivity of human resources is more in non-agriculture. There is too much of labor in agriculture, and therefore we should promote more of non-agriculture and shift the surplus manpower from agriculture to non-agriculture. Well, all this happened in the Western society because they are early birds. They took to industrialization much before all of us, and so they had uncontrolled, unrestrained access to resources, natural resources including. They had captive markets and colonies, and there was no artificial intelligence like today we have. Therefore, they were able to actually grow very fast in the manufacturing sector, shift the manpower from agriculture, and therefore we have 2%, 3% of those countries in agriculture. But in 21st century, is that possible? Where every country, every continent is equally competing in one or the other domain. So it is very difficult to capture global market like the Western society did. Therefore, we will not be able to actually move away from agriculture to non-agriculture at the same pace as those countries did. Second, even if we can, the artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, all this emerging suite of technologies are all more or less labor substituting. Yes, they will create some new kinds of jobs, but proportionate to the population, they may not be able to create the same number of jobs as we require. It's a big challenge. So given this, how does it relate to the mountainous region? The point is that for India as a whole, we will have to continue to depend on natural resource-based activities, and of them agriculture is the primary domain. And in the mountainous region, where 1/3 is plain land, 2/3 is mountainous. That you should remember. So if 2/3 is mountainous, agriculture becomes extremely difficult. And if you try to do it also using machines, for example, we are again going to compromise the ecosystem of the mountains. So only where the plains are there, we may be able to do some agriculture. So the thing to remember is that in mountainous region, we cannot promote manufacturing sector the way we did and we do in plain region. If manufacturing sector cannot happen in mountainous region, the only way forward is to depend more and more on farm sector, farm and farm related activities. So how do you make that sustainable? I think that's the basic question. How do you make farming and farming related activities more sustainable in the mountainous region? So can we have the intensive system of agriculture given to us by the Green Revolution technology also in mountainous region? If we do that, we are doomed. What does it mean? There we use more of agrochemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. And if we use that here, then entire water is going to get toxic, rivers are going to get toxic, and then as it is not going to be profitable because the net returns on investments are going to be much less in this region because the productivity can't be the same as in Indo-Gangetic plains. So there is a challenge. So how do we find new technology? That means our research and development, I think Dr. Seema is right. Unfortunately, in India today, our investment in R&D is not more than 0.45 to 0.6. We should be at least 1%. And that 1% has to be reoriented to find new technology for mountainous regions, rain-fed regions, drought-prone areas. To highlight, for rice we have got n number of institutes under our ICAR. For pulses, oilseeds and millets, we have just 1 or 2 maximum. Just look at the bias. So technology impact is very poor. Price impact is also poor. So how do mountainous regions actually improve? I think that is the biggest challenge. So we'll have to find out sustainable research, sustainable technology, and sustainable practices. And the good point that all of us must remember was that Dr. Mamta pointed out, ecosystem services. See now, for example, in Haryana, they tried for 1 year. If they go for corn in place of paddy, they'll get 2,000 rupees per acre. But unfortunately, that was not continued. Now here we are going to ask our farmers in the Himalayan region and also non-farmers, manufacturing sector, etc., to practice sustainable technology, to go for decentralized system production. But then they won't be able to compete because of the scales of economy. So why should the people of this region, sacrifice for the ecology of the nation, ecology of the world, whereas the people on the plains will continue to enjoy? Is this equitability? Is this what Constitution of India is saying? So if we want people of mountainous region to practice sustainable ways of farming and non-farming, then the nation must pay them eco-services. See, this is a fundamental thing. Otherwise, we will not be able to promote this thing. We can have best of technology, best of messaging, etc. But if we do not compensate the people of the region, we will not be able to actually make them adopt it. Because we want Himalayan region to sustain. We want our perennial rivers to sustain. But to do that thing, economically we need to compensate them. Otherwise there won't be economic equality. Economic equality is a basic, and therefore the policy has to be such that we compensate for the eco-services they are rendering for the nation. So these are some of the things, and please remember, if you look at today, the way the trade is happening between mountainous region and the plain region, I include also South India in the plain region. If you look at the two-way trade, it is actually a one-way trade for the mountainous region. We get water from here, minerals from here, timber from here, everything we are getting from here. What is coming back? They pay more for inputs and they get less on their output because supply chain management is not possible. Value chain management is extremely challenging. So which means that if we need to create a two-way trade and a fair trade practices, we need to think innovatively. And some of the practices we need to recognize for this is, of course, sustainable agriculture, which means organic farming, natural farming, alternate technology, etc., etc. But as we said in the beginning, farming alone is not going to generate enough income. Come whatever you do, farming is not going to generate enough income. So non-farm income is important. But what kind of non-farm income? And that has to be in such a way that it is in tune with nature, tune with the culture, tune with the traditions. So therefore, we need to once again identify the indigenous technologies, indigenous knowledge, cultural practices. So many things are there. So how do we actually upgrade those things? A bit of technology has to be imparted, which still remains sustainable, whether it is weaving, whether it is handicraft, artifacts. There are so many traditional practices. So how do we ensure that these are upgraded to meet the current tastes and preferences and position them as Dr. Devesh said? Now if you go to Europe, they will say that, oh, this is handmade handkerchief or handmade pot. It is positioned properly in the value chain. So can't we also position our commodities, a shawl made from the yak or made from the camel? How do we position it in the value chain and actually get the right price for the farmer? So I think there is a lot that we need to do. We have to think afresh. It cannot be the same management practice, same technology, same price policy as we have for the plain areas. So this is not just to appease people from Uttarakhand sitting here. Only Uttarakhand people are not the people from mountainous region. As I said, right from Jammu Kashmir, Leh, Ladakh, passing along the Himalayan region, 2,500 kilometers of length of India is all mountainous and at different altitudes, from low altitude to medium to high altitudes. And each altitude requires a separate intervention. So I think there's a lot of work for all of us, for the researchers, for the academics, for the policy makers, for everybody. So this should be the takeaway for the organizers. And I'm sure, see, somebody in the morning, Dr. Sudhar was saying that, how do we make this conference effective? it can be effective in many ways. Even the students who just listened to us, I'm sure they got a little bit of their antenna towards the new thinking, right? It's not necessary that, all the time we only write. Yes, writing is there, advocating is there, reaching out to government is there, becoming part of the policy making is there. There are various ways which you can make it, and I would really request our chairman of the conference here, and also Professor Ramesh Chand, who is unfortunately not here, because he's got his right hand in the government policies there. So I think we can together really take it to the government, and I'm sure government is also willing to listen, and this is what we do. So thank you very much, all the panelists, and thank you very much for listening. So I think you'll stand up for a photograph and then we'll close it. Yeah, right, I'm coming. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your patience.
Thank you so much, Chairman Sir, and all the panelists. Yes, this is the time for the group photograph. I request the audio video team to please. Yes. So this brings us to the end of the day's proceedings.